Nick, good to see you. Great topic today. Should couples retire together? Couples should carefully consider the financial and emotional consequences of retiring at the same time. And you have 4 suggested questions they talk through first. So number 1, have you correctly calculated your cost of living in retirement? And I was surprised to learn that 46% of older adults spend more during their first few years of retirement than before they retired.
I'm actually surprised that's not higher. And what was interesting, what you said about carefully, because you do. And sometimes what happens is you'll have spouses that will disagree. One's a spender, one's a saver. And so they view a budget differently. One might be the person who's really big into budgets, and I got to see all those spreadsheet numbers. And then you'll have the other one who thinks that a budget is too constraining. And so there's different types of things that you got to be careful of with these. And so how I look at this, and the reason I said, when you said, I think the number was 46% of older, I think adults spend more.
Spend more when they first retire.
So when I was growing up as a kid, my dad told me about grandpa, his dad, my grandpa. And he said that when he retired from Ford Motor Company, that the problem was, not that he retired, but that he had 8 hours more a day to spend money. Think about that for a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
So travel costs money, eating out costs money, going and visiting the grandkids costs money. All those bucket list items, those cost money too. Guess what you aren't doing? You aren't making money.
Mm-hmm.
And so going back to that term that I use, budget, what you almost need to be doing is, the problem with the word budget is it's too constraining. It doesn't really encapsulate everything that we really do. You got to figure out what your lifestyle actually costs. What are those things that you were planning on doing, whether it's going on a cruise, going to the beach, whatever you're doing, wherever you're traveling, where do your kids live, Nashville, Boston? What's it cost when you want to go there and visit them, and when you want to go a lot more because they have grandkids or you have grandkids? So there's different things that you got to be careful of and look into. But here's one big myth. Don't expect your expenses to go down as you age. A lot of people think that, oh, I'm going to spend a lot early on, and then as I get older, I'm going to spend less. That doesn't really happen that way. Expenses go either stay the same or go up. Very rarely do we ever get a phone call here in the office from somebody saying, hey, I need to cut back on my income. They're usually saying, how can my income go higher? And especially now in Florida, if we just look over the last couple months, homeowners insurance is up 42% in the state of Florida.
Right.
10% in other parts of the country, but right here in Florida, 42%. So you have all these extra expenses that pop up that most people aren't ready for.
Good point. All right. Next, you need to determine when is the best time for each person to claim Social Security.
Well, and if you're still working, it shouldn't be at 62. There's something called the earnings test. And this is what gets a lot of people. They're thinking, oh, I'm 62. I can turn on my Social Security and I'm still working. Well, here's what happens. If you earn too much, and it's not that much, it's like $21,000 and some change. If you earn too much, for every $2 you make in Social Security, you have to give $1 back. Now, this is up until full retirement age, which for most people is 67. So you really, just because you can turn it on, sometimes it doesn't make sense to turn it on. You got to do some strategizing, look at your income, look at what you're working, where you're working, what your plan is long term. The bottom line is, the longer that you wait, the higher that income goes. So for every year that you wait, Social Security goes up by about 8% through your full retirement age. And there's a chart, beautiful, because it shows how much you actually lose. Look, at 62, you get $700 a month of benefits, but at 67, I think that says $1,000. You can see that. It's a 30% haircut.
Right.
And if Social Security in the future cuts benefits like they're saying they're going to, you're getting, if you turn benefits on at 62, you're getting a haircut now, and you're getting another haircut later. And so the longer you wait, the better. It goes up dramatically. And so that's one thing to be cognizant of. Another thing that you got to be aware of too is the survivor, what we call the survivors or the spousal income cliff. And what happens is, some people think, oh, something happens to me, my spouse is going to get both Social Security incomes. Nope. They get to keep one, and it's the higher of the two benefits, but that is a big amount that gets cut. So if you have a husband and wife, and they both decide to retire at 62 and both turn on Social Security at 62, you've in essence locked in a smaller number. And down the road, if one person walks out on life, the survivor is going to get a smaller number. So sometimes it makes sense to look at staggering concepts where you can maybe have one person take benefits at one point in time and have another benefit taken later on as it gets higher. That way, if something happens to the other spouse, their surviving spouse gets the higher benefit, gets a higher benefit that had built up over a longer period of time.
Yeah, right. A lot of moving parts to that calculation. All right, number 3, do you feel ready to retire? The decision is not just a financial one. Keep in mind, if you retire at the same time, suddenly you're going to be spending a lot more time together.
So my dad says, don't retire from something, retire to something.
Right.
And so I tell people, you got to plan out what your perfect day is. What does that perfect day look like? Kind of going back, Royal Caribbean has that perfect day at Coco. Same type of thing. What does that cost? These perfect days that you want to create in retirement. What's that look like? What are you doing? What's that costing? And, are you going to contribute in a different way? Maybe you leave your job, but maybe there's certain things that you want to be involved in. Coaching, maybe you want to help out at the church, all these other things. What are you actually doing to fill those days now that you have time to do them? And I think on one of the other times that we've chatted, I talked about this neighbor that I had years ago, that when he retired to the chair underneath the garage door. And he was the self-appointed traffic cop. People would come down the road, and if they were going too fast, he wouldn't bug them. Or if they were going too fast, he would bug them. He would go like this with his arms. And if they were going too slow, he wouldn't do anything. That was his job. Sadly, he didn't last too long because that's not really a job that I think gave him any purpose. So you just got to look at what is your purpose-driven life that you want in retirement, and have that conversation with your spouse. What is our purpose? What is it that we want to do to give back?
Right.
And that can be some really great conversation. It might be scary, but it's a great conversation to have because it's something you're going to have to deal with.
And have that conversation now, not later.
Absolutely. It's tough once it's later, because if your purpose is to do certain things that cost money, well, there's a financial thing, and it might require working a little bit longer to build up more money to do what you're wanting to do.
All right. Number 4, this may be the most important question. Do you have a good retirement plan?
Most people don't have a plan at all.
Right.
Having
and a 401k
done this,
is not a plan.
They'll say, hey, I have a milk crate full of stuff, and they'll bring it in here, and there's stacks and stacks of things with pie charts on them and everything else. And then I'll ask the question, well, what's the purpose of this money? I don't know. Do you know how you're going to take money out of this? I don't know that either. So they don't really have a plan. And sadly, most people don't. I've seen some studies that show that only about 20 to 30% of retirees actually have a plan. And the number, if it's a written plan, is even lower than that. There might be only a 10% chance that people have a written plan. And it goes back, years ago, there was a commercial from ING. ING is a company that doesn't exist anymore. But I think a lot of people remember the commercial, because how the commercial was laid out was a guy was carrying foam core numbers. It said $1 million on one, $500,000 on another, $1.5 million on the other. And it trained people into thinking that retirement is just a number.
Right.
And it's not. It's part of it. But part of this plan is you need to know, how do I take that number? That's maybe the investment plan. But how do I take that number and get income from it that lasts as long as I do? That's the retirement income plan. So there's an investment plan and an income plan. And then how do you keep more of that money in your pocket instead of in Uncle Sam's pocket? That's a tax question. And then maybe the other thing is, well, how do I handle healthcare and Medicare and pay for those things and long-term care? That's the healthcare part. So there's a fourth plan. And then how do I pass this money on as easily and effortlessly to my beneficiaries at the other end? There's the estate and legacy type plan. So you have to have all these things written out, documented, thought through. It's more than just having a number.
Right. And speaking with a professional can help clarify all these questions so that you can figure out if you can retire now, later, or even together. So Nick, if somebody wants to have that conversation with you, how can they reach you?
Best way is to give us a phone call. 844 Group 10 is our number here at the office. And you can also schedule, and there's probably a couple other ways. You can also go to our website, Group10Financial.com, and you can schedule a quick 15-minute strategy session call where we can unpack what plans you need to have in place and how those work, and if there's any red flags that exist. But also on our website, Group10Financial.com, you can get our toolkit, our On the Money Retirement Toolkit. It's literally a 2-pound box of all the retirement things that you need, checklists and different things to help you figure out where you're at and where you need to be. And that's a great first step,
Right.
there as well.
All right, Nick, thank you so much for your time today.
Great being with you, Erin.